I'm Barbara Bailey, the Master Gardener Coordinator at VCE Loudon, and I am for the soil because soil is the foundation of life, both above and below ground.
You are listening to For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee, and Mary Sketch Bryant, my co-host, is joining us today. She is with the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Dr. Eric Benfelt continues on vacation. He'll be back with us in a very short time. But, Mary, we've got a lot to talk about, and we have a returning guest today. Would you reintroduce our special guest?
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so excited to have Dr. Wayne Teel back with us to dive more deeply into some of his expertise. He's a professor of geography at JMU, like Jeff said, really expertise in agroforestry, biochar, the human components of agriculture. So just excited to have him here. And I guess just to dive right into it, Dr. Teel, we talked some about agroforestry in the last episode, and that's kind of actually a buzzword in Virginia agriculture right now. There's a lot of projects to try and increase that for carbon sequestration, for climate resilience. And another buzzword is biochar, largely tied to carbon sequestration and climate smart agriculture as well. What are we even talking about when we say biochar?
Okay, biochar is a natural product of combustion, but in the absence of sufficient oxygen, so that one of the leftovers are the carbon skeleton of the plants that you're burning. You can provide a low oxygen environment or an oxygen-free environment, and you can make biochar of different kinds. And all of it really is carbonized material, somewhere around 70% to up to 90% and above carbon. And that percentage helps determine what its ultimate use will be. But because it's high carbon and doesn't have a lot of the hydrogens and oxygens that are normally on biomass, that makes it recalcitrant. It won't break down through time. And it also makes it have a very, very high surface area, which means that it can interact with water and nutrients in a different way than the actual biomass does. So it has this long-term impact potential. Whereas if you just add biomass that is uncharred, not pyrolyzed, it disappears relatively readily by comparison. So generally, even with wood, it would disappear in 4 or 5 years if it's buried in the soil, because it naturally breaks down and forms other things through the process of getting eaten by the soil microorganisms. Whereas biochar tends to stay. And some of the studies in the Amazon where biochar was first identified and is called Terra Preta dos Indios. This material has been measured at over 3,000 years old in the soil, and maybe older than that. We just don't really know fully how long ago the native peoples of the Amazon started using it. But they did notice that it improved soil fertility, and that's what attracted the interest of modern researchers in biochar, along with its carbon sequestration possibilities.
I'm a fan of root words, and yeah, I guess that's a pun being with soil health. Root words, biochar. Bio means living or life,
right?
And char means burned. So in simplistic terms, it's burned life form. Am I close?
Yeah, you're very close. And it can be almost anything in that has biomass can be charred, but the most effective types are generally plant materials. I mean, they have done bones and other things too to make char, but they have a different kind of property because they have a lot more mineral in them. Whereas the woody biomass and grasses, corn stalks, things like that, tend to have a little bit different kinds of carbon skeletal arrangements that is better for the charred material. So we tend to be more oriented to plants, and depending on what you want, you can have different kinds of uses for it. But it definitely is life that's pyrolyzed or charred.
Quick story to share. Several years ago, before COVID, I think it's been 7 or 8 years ago now, I was having a conversation with a farmer here in the Shenandoah Valley. He's a uh, very diverse farm. Has dairy, has poultry, has row crops, has forestry. I mean, he does a little of everything, but he's a very creative guy. He's always thinking outside the box. And we were talking about biochar, and he was talking about how he made his own biochar using the litter from his turkey houses, which is basically wood shavings and turkey manure. And then he would run that through a furnace, and he ended up with what he called biochar. And he said, "Here, Ish, I'm going to give you 3 5-gallon buckets of biochar, and I want you to take them home, and I want you to try at least one of them in your garden." I did that. And he said, "Make sure that you record the weights of your tomatoes when they come off of the vine." So I did. I was very scientific about it. I had 4 plants. They were all celebrity variety. And I incorporated about a half of a 5-gallon bucket in those 4 planting in the root zone there. And that summer, we harvested 160 pounds off of 4 tomato plants. I suddenly became an advocate for biochar because I've never seen anything like it since then. And for the gardeners who are listening, how can biochar help them in their own garden, improve soil health?
Okay. Yeah, this is the sort of classic example. In fact, I think I even know the farmer you were getting it from. But the way to employ it is relatively simple. If you take wood-based biochar, which isn't what you had, but wood-based biochar, then it basically comes out with a little bit of nutrient, mostly the metals that are natural in these materials, like calcium and magnesium. But if you take that and mix it with nutrient before you put it on something, the biochar will actually grab hold of the nutrient and then hold it for it. If you put it in raw, sometimes it'll do the opposite of what you had. But you were doing yours with a turkey poultry litter, so it already had a high amount of nutrient. The only thing missing from it was probably a little bit of nitrogen, because that tends to burn off in the pyrolysis process. If you had a little nitrogen-based manure to the biochar, and then the biochar from that source will give you all the nutrient you need and has good nutrient holding capacity. So even if it's get a lot of rain, it won't leach out, and therefore it's more available to the plants because the biochar tends to hold things against leaching. It also improves water holding capacity of the soil. So if you irrigate, you can irrigate less if you've got a lot of biochar in the soil than you would if you don't, simply because those two things, the nutrient holding capacity and the water holding capacity, are the main benefits of the biochar in the soil.
So, Dr. Teel, you mentioned that adding nutrients. So there's a lot, I mean, there's a growing number of biochar products available on the marketplace.
Right.
How a producer, gardener, like how do they navigate that? How do you suggest, understanding what's in one, what's a good one, if they can't make it themselves?
Well, the biochar is now getting a little bit more sophisticated in how they're marketing it. And one of the things that they've shown is that high temperature biochar, this is biochar where the temperature gets above 700 degrees Celsius, is actually very good at capturing heavy metals and things like PFAS and PFOS, which are types of chemicals that the EPA has now ordered municipalities to get out of their water supplies. And so if you put in carbon filters of this really high temperature stuff, that kind of biochar can do that. That's not necessarily the kind you want in agriculture, because you don't necessarily want all the good stuff baked out of it in the process. So it's better to get a lower temperature biochar if it is not interacted with the nutrient already. If it's combined with poultry litter, then it's already got some nutrient. Combined with cattle manure, it's already got some nutrient in it. But if you get it raw, then you want to use it in your compost pile. I recommend about 10% of the compost pile volume to be biochar, but not too much more than that. And it'll absorb some of the nutrient and then add that water holding capacity to it. But I would try to get a lower temperature biochar if there is specifications on it, where it's made somewhere between 450 degrees Celsius and 550. I could translate that into Fahrenheit for people if you wanted it, but usually the scientists are giving you the numbers in centigrade. So
I've never seen biochar available at garden centers. Why is it not bagged and sold at retail?
Well, that's a good question, and I think it is getting started, but often it's going from the producers directly to farmers rather than going through an intermediary. So it hasn't really gotten into the garden supply market yet. I think that's a good niche. I am working with the company Shenandoah Valley Organics and some of their growers, putting biochar in the houses. And one of the things I think would be a good niche market for this is to bag that poultry litter from these organic chicken houses and then sell that to gardeners. And I think that would add a value-added product for these local farmers. So I'm trying.
Have you ever seen biochar used at scale on, row crop producers or
that is being tried? I think the Iowa State University and Ames is developing some programs with that. We don't have any programs with that in Virginia that I know of, but it is certainly a possibility. But then you have to have a less expensive source of that material.
And for someone, and then maybe it's different for a gardener, backyard gardener, or a larger producer looking to learn more about biochar and the opportunities, where would you turn them, to get reliable scientific information?
There are a number of groups working on biochar right now. The United States Biochar Initiative, USBI, is one source that I go to frequently. I've been involved with them myself since about 2008. A local farmer, actually it was a landscaper named Eric Knight, got me involved with them 15 years ago, which is how I found out about biochar in the first place. And the International Biochar Initiative is also another source for information. They both have good websites and a lot of research, although that research tends to be more on the academic side. But there are a number of places that are available now, and of course I'm quite willing to help people with more information too. One of the popular books that I really like about biochar was produced by Albert Bates. He actually has 2 books on it, and he gives a detailed history of biochar related to the Amazon in the biochar solution, I think is the name of the book. And then another one that came out, I think in 2018 or 2019, is called Burn: Using Fire to Cool the Earth, that he wrote with the head of USBI. And those 2 books are great popular sources in the sense that they're very readable and not academic in their orientation.
That looks like a great resource. I just Googled his name and it instantly came up with Biochar Initiative. So Albert Bates, Bates.
Yes.
Sounds like a great resource.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been a great resource. I have learned a lot about biochar. I want to thank you for joining us, Dr. Wayne Teel, professor at James Madison University in Harrisonburg. And thank you, sir, for everything you do with our young people and helping to educate them about the environment and soil health. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
And Mary, we will catch you in the next one.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well, we've got just a minute or so remaining in this episode of For the Soil, a conversation. And whenever we've got just a little extra time, I like to go over the 4 core principles of soil health. Yes, there are 4. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why we call it For the Soil. Number 1, keep the soil covered. It's the first step in protecting the soil from erosion, but it also buffers soil temperature, it slows rainfall runoff, and aids rainfall infiltration. Number 2, minimize soil disturbance, both physical and chemical. This proactive measure can heal and protect properties of the soil and ultimately enhance the biological component of soil life. Number 3, maximize living roots. Doing this longer throughout the year fuels biological activity in the soil, and it helps to contribute to improved soil structure. And finally, number 4, energize with diversity. Use different crop species and also integrate livestock where possible for specific purposes to enhance the chemical, the physical, and the biological aspects of the soil. It improves the whole system. So keep the soil covered, minimize soil disturbance, maximize living roots, and energize with diversity. For the Soil, a Conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org. If you should have a specific question about soil health, call your local extension office, your local USDA service center, or a Soil and Water Conservation District office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of the Flip Charts, all rights reserved. For the Soil, a Conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee.